Okay, wait. It actually feels like it's been so long. Let me get comfy. Let me get comfy. Okay. How are y'all? Okay, well, I know no one's in the chat just yet on the live, but I'm actually really happy to be here. It's a glorious Monday, the last week of October. It's been a really great Libra season. I'm a Libra, so October is just always such a good time of like reflection for me. So today I'm in a different part of my art studio. Um, yeah. This is a painting that I like, I kind of abandoned it. I want to say back in Q1, I started this painting and then I was like, you know what? I don't know how I feel about it. But now looking at it and like after I hung it up and I was deciding like, well, I want to add some more stuff to it. I actually think I kind of like it. Okay, so let me make sure. Okay, yeah, I think it's better. I felt like it was like falling forward. Okay, so yeah, let's get started. So I'm tempted to not light the incense today because I'm a little sniffly because of the weather. Hi, Bomo. So I don't know if I want to light the incense today, but I feel like it's routine. But I feel like it's gonna make me start sneezing because I'm already sniffly. But anyways, today we are reading from Your First Million by Arlan Hamilton. So we've been reading this book for the month of October for the Alaere Book Club. And oops, yeah, so I feel like we've learned a lot from this book. And even though we're not going to finish it on today's live, I do encourage you to check it out and read it. Like, it's a pretty packed book, so I didn't really think, because of like when we started reading it, I didn't think that we would get through the entire book on live, but I did want to introduce a new audience to this book, and I knew that it was something I wanted to read, you know, during my birthday month. Hi, Rain Zero. Hi, Rakesh. What's up, y'all? So today we're reading from Your First Million. Running Man. What? That is a crazy comment. Okay, but hey, y'all. What's up? So we're reading from Your First Million by Arlan Hamilton, and I was just talking about like why I picked this book. Rakesh says, Madam, how are you? Have you finished your food? I mean, I did eat today, I did. But I'm drinking tea. It's like a hibiscus tea. But okay. Anyway, so we're not reading, or sorry, we're not done reading Your First Million just yet. So I'm gonna pick up from where we left off last week. And then we'll talk about like what we're going to read for November, Scorpio season. I feel like the pick for November, I actually really like it. I think it's going to be good. I read it before and I meant to like reread it again this year. And I feel like it's going to be good to like share with this audience. Running Man says, for a black girl, your voice isn't that annoying. Running Man, these comments are inappropriate, so I'm not understanding what's with the microaggressions, dude. You know, actually, I think what I forgot to do was set a positive intention. That's why we have some crazies in the chat right now. Okay, so today's positive intention is going to be harmony, cultivating a sense of inner harmony within, and also allowing that harmony to spread outwards so that we can always be, you know, called to glory and called to light when we, you know, engage with other people. Running Man says that's a compliment. So the thing is, when you say, you know what, let's educate you, just in case you actually did think it was a compliment. Here's why it wasn't received as such. So when you say for a black girl, your voice isn't that annoying, that implies that the whole population of black women have annoying voices. So in complimenting me, you are also insulting people that also, hold the same identity as me. So I hope you understand why that's not a compliment. It can be interpreted as a microaggression, and also a lot of like subconscious bias is embedded in that comment. I mean, I like my voice too, but like, I hope you understand why comments like that are not cool. But I'm gonna let you slide for today because I think you can benefit from the book that we're reading. But yeah, let's try to keep it, chill. Okay, so let's see. All right. We're currently in the chapter of owning your company. Okay, a normal gambler says hi. Running Man says, "What's the book about?" So the book is, sorry, I don't know why I hear my voice on my laptop. Okay, so the book is called Your First Million by Arlan Hamilton. And this book is, so basically her background is she's a multimillionaire venture capitalist. She went from poverty and homelessness to founding a venture capital firm called Backstage Capital that has funded multi-millions of dollars to underrepresented founders. So it's like venture capital, private equity, business, and like just her journey to making millions of dollars. Um, a normal gambler says, I have a question. Running Man says, is it how to be a successful scammer? Dude, you're bringing a lot of negativity, so I'm going to just remove you. I don't know. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to remove you. You're just not being a vibe. Anyways, so let's see who else is in the chat. A normal gambler. Hi, you said I have a question. Okay, let's see. Okay, a normal gambler says you are a scammer, but you don't know if you should keep doing that. I don't know what kind of energy y'all are on. But you know what? I'm gonna just ignore y'all and read the book because I don't know what y'all got going on. But anyway, so we're on page 82 where she talks about the importance of ownership and just owning your company. Okay, so let's see. She says bootstrapping makes it easier to stay true to your original ideas and to be beholden to no one but your customers and yourself. As the founder, you should be the person who knows the most about your business and your industry. This means that if you get to a point where you can see that the marketplace is changing or that something you're doing isn't working and you need to pivot, you can go ahead and do that without having to get permission or buy-in from investors. With no investors to answer to, you can spend less time selling investors on your vision and more time talking to your customers, fine-tuning your product, and working on making that vision a reality. Okay, so this is kind of like where we left off last Monday. Okay, let me check into the chat. A normal gambler says, not in real life, but video games. Archangel, I don't know what you're saying. In Ray, I don't know. It's a lot of interesting people. Maybe I do. Let's pause. Maybe I do need to light the incense because I'm like, are y'all seeing the chat right now? I'm like, what do y'all have going on? Okay, Raffle says, hello, beautiful. Hello, a normal person in the chat. I was just like, what is going on? Is it because it's Monday? Everybody's like losing their marbles a little bit. I don't know. But hey, Raffle, welcome. We're reading Your First Million, but I'm just pausing to, light some incense because the one day I decide not to light anything, that's when it's some crazy people coming into the chat. And I'm like, listen, I don't have time for it, okay? Rahul, yes, I do remember you from India. Okay, so yeah, like we said, today's intention is harmony, cultivating inner harmony so that we can also bring that harmony into the world. So we are reading from Your First Million if you're just joining in. But, you know, we had a few people trying to disrupt the intentions of today. And I'm like, guys, I'm Professor Pesu. Like, do not distract me. But no, real talk though, I think like as a founder, it's been cool reading this book. And then like, I mean, if you don't know anything about me, I did study international political economy at Brown for undergrad, and then I studied public affairs. And so, like, I really do love talking about anything that can empower entrepreneurship in underrepresented communities. And so I think that's why Your First Million, it speaks to me. But anyways, let's get back to it. Okay. I've spoken to so many founders who have had to ask for permission from their larger investors before they make a decision that, in my opinion, they shouldn't even need to ask about. Never forget that you are the expert in your company. When you take venture capital, you immediately have a boss. But if you're an entrepreneur, you probably prefer to be your own boss. That's partially why you got into this, right? With venture capital, you are beholden to other people's ideas of success. You are held to someone else's benchmarks, and if you don't grow your company tenfold, it's considered a failure, even if you have thousands of loyal customers. Okay, Rahul says, today, are you making any painting? No, so on Mondays we do the Alaere book club. So today I'm just reading. Yeah, no, today I'm just reading, but I do have one of my original paintings here behind me. I like had it rolled up and just like hung it up recently. But I mean, I could talk about some of my art, but Mondays are definitely for the book club. Maybe I should like specify that. I put it in the title. I said today that we're reading from Your First Million, but maybe I'll just like put that today is the Alaere Book Club. But if y'all are enjoying this, be sure to like the video and also subscribe. Okay, so let's go ahead and put, you know, book club, just so nobody is confused. Book club, reading Your First Million. Okay. Yeah, because I think like once I put that it's a book club, I think it will signal to people that we're not just talking about like, I don't know, whatever was attracting the interesting characters earlier. I'm like, let me adjust it. Okay. You know what? I'll just put like Millionaire Book Club. Okay. So, back to Your First Million by Arlan Hamilton. Okay, so where were we? Can you imagine if we held all other businesses to this standard? Oh, you didn't make more than 10 times the amount of money you made last year? What a failure. The bottom line is that you're the founder, which means you're the one who gets to decide what success looks like. What I think a lot of people miss in my story is that while I have raised a few $1 million from investors and generated millions of dollars in revenue since I started backstage, I've also bootstrapped companies to keep the lights on. When I started my podcast, Your First Million, I was offered money, which I turned down. I wanted to ensure the podcast remained exactly how I wanted it to be. Bootstrapping can mean having to scrimp and save, but you get to retain your ownership along with the freedom to make mistakes, learn from them, and move on. Okay. All right, so let's check into the chat. Raffle says, okay, I am in my office. I have some work. I will see you soon later. Bye, Raffle. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, so if you're new, we're reading from Your First Million. I'm just trying to make sure that like people know today is the book club because I have been live painting every day for the most part. Also, this incense, I'm gonna put it over here. I have been live painting from my studio, and so Mondays are for the book club. But yeah, like, so right now we are just talking about like ownership and the different ways to fund a company. Sorry, y'all. There's a lot of chaotic good just happening. Like, I'm like, oh my god. I think it's also because whenever I set up in a new area, I'm like, okay, things are a little bit different, but it is what it is. Okay, so let me make sure also that I pin in the chat where y'all can check out my artwork. Imre says, or so Raffle says, I really enjoyed. Oh, thank you. Even though we haven't even really like gotten into what we're reading today. Imre says, love you. Imre, welcome. I hope you subscribe. Take care, Raffle. Okay. So let's see. I'm gonna put the title of the book as well. Okay, I think this should be good. Like, I think that this should, you know, show what today's topic is. But let's get back to reading from the book. It takes longer, of course, but the slow pace allows you to grow intentionally and iterate as you go, rather than try to scale as quickly as possible, often before you're ready, to meet some impossible standard of growth. Plus, in the extra time you give yourself to learn the ropes, you're also leveling up your talent. I think we need to start changing the way we look at outside capital as being the best source of funding. Blended Designs began as a t-shirt business in 2014, but really took off in March of 2017, when founder Casey Kelly was on medical leave from her salaried job. She had a second income stream from her t-shirt business, but the profit margins were very low. One day, her 8-year-old son, Carter, came home from school and said, Mommy, I have an idea for the business. I want a bag with my face on it. Casey's day job was in consumer insights and analytics, so she was able to use those skills to research what her son was asking for. She found that fewer than 2% of the bags in this market depicted characters of color. This was a gap in the market that she knew needed to be filled. Children of color deserve to have the option of buying a character bag with someone who looked like them on it. So Blended Designs began producing backpacks with a range of characters and the slogan, I can do anything. Even Casey could not have predicted how high the demand for this product would be, and she initially struggled to fill all of the orders that were made. The backpacks were branded 1954 by BD, a nod to the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education ruling that desegregated schools in the United States, and to the fact that Blended Designs aims to desegregate the back-to-school category in retail. Within 4 months of launching the 1954 branded backpacks, Blended Designs pulled in $250,000 in sales, with Casey and her husband Harvey running the company full-time. At first, they were a mom and pop shop, working from their home, using their shared bank account for the business as well as their personal funds, as many entrepreneurs do when bootstrapping their company. Then, in 2018, they were approached by Walmart, who wanted to sell their products online before stocking them in their physical stores. But the Kellys did not have the inventory or any way to produce it at the scale required. At this point, they knew it was the right time to look for outside investment, and they made a deal with a minority-owned venture capital firm in Jacksonville, Florida, where they lived. This was the turning point for Blended Designs that allowed them to reach $1 million in sales in 2019. When I spoke to Casey in 2020, Blended Designs was on its way to pulling in another $1 million that year, even with the pandemic closing schools down for long periods of time. Another key milestone for Blended Designs came when the pandemic hit. Suddenly, kids had to start wearing masks, and as a savvy mom, Casey knew that just like everything else kids wear, they would want their masks to be fun. Not only that, but there just weren't as many masks for children available, so she spotted another gap in the market. In 2020, Casey announced that Blended Designs would be producing masks printed with their 10 characters and their I Can Do Anything slogan. She expected around 500 sales over the next couple of weeks. But once again, the response was huge, with thousands of orders pouring in within the first few hours after the masks were announced. Okay, so hey, just gonna check in to the chat. I hope you guys are enjoying. So today we're reading from Your First Million by Arlan Hamilton. I need like a tea break. Okay, so yeah, we're reading from Your First Million. Arlan Hamilton is just a really inspirational author, businesswoman. She went from homelessness and poverty to creating a venture capital firm called Backstage Capital that raises multi-millions of dollars for underrepresented founders. And so as a founder myself and someone navigating accessing capital, I gravitated towards this book in my local Barnes and Noble, and I was like, yeah, let me read this. But then I figured, why not share the knowledge that I'm soaking up from this book with my community here. So if you enjoy discourse and books and art, this is my original art behind me. I'm also an artist. Actually, I did not even introduce myself in today's live because I just assumed y'all know who I am and are probably already subscribed. But if you're not, my name is Odemi Pesu, and I'm an artist and fashion designer and author. I am also an author. So this is not my book, but it's called Force of Nature, and it's available on Amazon and Walmart, Barnes and Noble Nook, Waterstones, Booktopia, different indie stores, all of that great stuff. So Alaere Lifestyle is my company where I sell my art and my fashion line, and also just other lifestyle products that can elevate your life. So yeah, let me see if I've forgotten anything. Oh yeah, I'm also launching a magazine called the Alaere Manifesto magazine. I'll probably do a separate video just really talking about that and what you can expect. But that's just a little bit about me. Okay, that's all. Also, I invite you to subscribe and give this live a like if you are enjoying the book and the conversation. But okay, so back to the book. She expected around 500 sales over the next couple of weeks, but once again the response was huge, with thousands of orders pouring in within the first few hours after the masks were announced. The pivot from backpacks to masks was a bit risky, but it worked, in part because Casey and Harvey bootstrapped so much of their business in the early days and still owned the majority of Blended Designs. This meant that they were able to be nimble and make the important decision to pivot without having to ask for permission from a board of investors, which would have slowed down the process so tremendously that the moment to strike would have been lost. This is where the importance of ownership becomes clear. That is so true. Actually, I feel like we talked about this last week, just my own journey and learning about how to pivot in business. Oh yes, when I was talking about the sunken cost fallacy and why the sunken cost fallacy will have you stuck, and the ability to be malleable and adjust, to watch the markets, watch what's happening in politics, to understand what's happening in the world essentially, and pretty much steer your ship forward in the right way. I think that is just really important. And so ownership does allow you to do that. That's why I always say, if you have an idea and you're building on it, just register the LLC, register the S Corp, just register the business before you feel ready, because that way at least you will own like all of the ideas, all of the mistakes, like you will own everything under an entity and you'll be able to kind of like track your progress. But I think it can be hard, you know, when you haven't established a sense of ownership and you're just kind of like, you know, essentially throwing paint at the wall. But when you create something and you're building on that foundation, you can actually measure your growth better. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Oh, Imre, I don't understand the language that you are typing in, unfortunately, but thank you for being here and I hope you subscribe. But thanks for, you know, putting something in the chat. I just can't understand it. Okay, but I hope you guys are enjoying the book, Your First Million by Arlan Hamilton, venture capitalist, Black woman entrepreneur, multimillionaire, overall inspiration. So, yeah, let's get back to the book. So, we're on page 86, and she says bootstrapping won't always be possible, especially if your product is expensive to make, your profit margins are low, or you don't have savings you can afford to pour into your business. But here are some ways you can begin. Make a list of your monthly expenses and see what you can eliminate and reduce. Do as much of the work as you can yourself before hiring other people or spending money to outsource various services. I totally agree with that. Because every time, like, just to interject, I remember like early in my business when I started my company in 2023, I thought like I had to outsource certain things. Nah, just teach yourself how to do everything so that way as you expand your company, you can already have like a format that you can show whoever you onboard and like you can master the different parts of your business. So like if you know, for example, what your marketing strategy is, you probably need someone to like execute it, refine it, somebody, you know, who has certain skill sets, but you still want to like familiarize yourself with, you know, your marketing, your branding. Because I remember like when I would consult and do like freelance consulting, it was a bit tough to work sometimes with business owners who like just were completely in the dark about certain things. Like they hadn't really taken the time to establish, okay, you know, this is at least the message that we want the brand to speak to, or, you know, they hadn't really thought about those things. So I don't think it's ever too early to think about things like that, especially as a founder. And yeah, like you don't have to outsource everything off rip, but I kind of mentioned this like I think in the last live that we did that I like when businesses are a little bit scrappy, just a little bit, you know. Yeah, like I think scrappy is the word because it forces you to be innovative, if you ask me. Okay, so back to the book. It is so cold. I'm like trying to get comfy. Okay. Let's see. Where were we? Oh yeah, okay, so do as much of the work as you can yourself before hiring other people or spending money to outsource various services. There are so many resources out there now that can help you do things yourself cheaply, such as software that helps you build a website for yourself easily, true, without needing to know how to code, online courses that can teach you how to manage your brand, and social media platforms that allow you to get to know your customers and what it is that they want from you. True, true, true. She's speaking, she has sense. Check out this book, y'all, though. Like, so far, so good. Okay, so she says consider your assets and revenue streams. Are you able to monetize some of your skills, perhaps as a consultant for other companies? Can you tap your network to negotiate a skill swap with another founder? Can you afford to experiment with pricing and packaging to improve your profit margins? When we see representations of startups in pop culture, it's often the same storyline. I quit my job to pursue my dream. That's great, but if you have a steady job, You should think hard before you quit your main source of income. If you have the kind of job where you can slowly reduce your hours, that would be the best option. Consider that the first investor in your company could be your day job. That is true. Like, I think, like, I was really thinking about, the timing of how I went about doing certain things. And I mean, in retrospect, I am glad that I left corporate at the time that I did to found Alaere Lifestyle. And also, I had been working for like 7 months with an executive leadership coach. So it's not like I didn't have some type of structure guiding me, but I'm the kind of person where I got to a place where I was like, I can't serve two masters. And I knew that God had called me to, engage with my artistry and my gifts in a specific way. Like, it was very clear that I had an assignment and I needed to give my all to that. And so I think if I didn't have that kind of conviction at the time, I probably would have just tried to like do things on the side. But we all know how it is though. Like, even if you say, oh, this is like my side hustle, if it's what you want to be your main thing, like if it's like something that this is going to be big, like I'm going to take this to the next level, then you kind of have to give it your all. That's my probably unconventional take on it, because I think like it's very energetic. I think I've always been someone who doesn't believe in a plan B. Like, yeah, like plan B is always an option, but I don't engage with my goals or my aspirations thinking like, oh yeah, if this doesn't work, I'll do plan B. No, I engage and I say, okay, yeah, this is gonna work, and I'm going to acquire the knowledge. I'm going to do what it takes to make this work, because before I even make a decision, I've already done, opportunity cost. Okay, what am I like foregoing to pursue this? I've done a SWOT analysis. Like, I'm very, very strategic with my decision making. And also, the scientific method helps. Like, what do you do before you have a hypothesis? You like do your research, you kind of like get an idea of like, okay, what am I even dealing with here, right? Then after you've done your research, you make that educated guess. That's when you make a hypothesis that, okay, yeah, I think this can work. And I think that's what I did with my business. I like had my MVP, my minimum viable product was literally like, hold on, let me show you guys. My minimum viable product was literally my book. And so when I saw, okay, this is essentially how I go about wholesale, this is how I get, distribution for my book, and this is how I sell it, this is how I do events. I was like, okay, and people are asking me, customers of my book are saying, hey, I want to see more of your artwork. So, I like took it step by step, and I think it wasn't until it got to a place where I truly, genuinely felt like I can't do both. I need to like give my Okay, sorry y'all. I don't know. It was like buffering for a quick second. I think maybe I had a call coming in. Might be. But okay, so yeah, like what was I even saying? But yeah, no, I think like once it gets to a point where you're like, okay, I need to go all in order for this to work. And if you like have a plan, I think go for it. I think like it's only when you don't have a community already and you don't already have like some type of product anchor, I think that's when it can be tricky to like leave your job and go and start like just go all in on a business. But I think everybody is also different. So yeah, like she's right. Your first investor in your company could be your day job. But I think there's also probably like certain endeavors in life where it does require you to go all in. Like, you gotta just energetically say, yeah, I'm gonna give my all to this, and not leave room for doubt. Because I think, yeah, going back to the plan B, conversation, I think like for me sometimes that's like creating energetic room for doubt or for failure. So it's a law of assumption type of thing, which is a little bit more spiritual, I guess. Okay, so anyways, back to the book. If you're just joining and we're reading Your First Million, a pretty good book, and this was our Alaere Book Club pick for October. Okay, so she says Samira Madhani, co-founder of Stacks, a tech company that radically simplifies the payment ecosystem, didn't know anything about venture capital when she began building her company. So before she took any money from venture capital investors, she participated in pitch competitions. She would walk in, pitch her business idea, and walk away with a check. She raised $200,000 for Stacks through pitch competitions alone. This is an amazing way to source a large amount of money that doesn't cost equity or come tied to a contract. She is right. I've only pitched once, and it was like a last minute competition for a very, very, very small amount. And it was an interesting experience. I think that the next time I would do it, I would probably pitch to an audience that is more knowledgeable and receptive to my industry, because I do think art, fashion, and publishing, it's either you get it or you don't. You know what I'm saying? If people don't see the value of art in the first place, then it's gonna be very hard to pitch to them. You know what I'm saying? Okay, but yeah. Also, I really like this piece of work I did behind me. I'm looking at the screen and I'm like, oh my gosh, wait, my art is pretty cool looking. Okay. Oh, hey, Jalen. What's up? Welcome back. How are you? We're reading from Your First Million for the book club. This is the pick for October. So, this is how much we've read. We probably are not going to finish the whole book together, but I do encourage you to check it out. So right now we're in a chapter where Arlan Hamilton, who is a multimillionaire, founder of a venture capital firm called Backstage Capital, and she raises money and invests in startups by underrepresented founders, especially in the Black community. So we're just reading her book, Your First Million, because she was able to build all of that after being homeless and going through extreme poverty. And so I think she has a pretty inspirational story and a lot of knowledge to share. Okay, so right now we just talked about how to go about funding your company while maintaining full equity and why ownership is important. So all right, back to the book. So she says, whether you decide to take venture capital or not, it is always important to remember that while money often does equate to power, it's more important to be in control. This means never being dependent on one investment. Backstage Capital has had investments fall through at the last minute more times than I can count. If we had no plan B for those times, we would never have been able to continue with the company. So I know I was just saying that in the case of jumping into your company, sometimes a plan B can leave energetic room for failure. Right now she's talking about having a plan B. I think obviously what she's saying, don't just rely on one investment, don't just rely on one stream of income. But what I meant in terms of plan B, because I just want to clarify, because I know the internet does not always recognize nuance. What I meant is specifically in the context of when you're working on two different endeavors, and when you have something that you want to go all in on. If you say, I want to do this career, or this is what I'm studying, and you just decide this is what I'm doing, you don't hem and haw oh, maybe. That's kind of what I meant. Just do plan A. It's kind of, what is that quote? I think it's from Star Wars. There is no try, there is only do. Is that from Star Wars? Anyways, yeah, there is no try, there is only do, is a quote that my teacher used to always tell us in middle school. So I think it's that's just how I view it. But she's totally right though about not depending on one investment, But I view that not really as like having plan Bs. I view that as more of like being strategic and smart, like with your cash flow and things like that. Okay, Jayla said, yep, that's Star Wars. Okay, like, I've never seen Star Wars. So I only know the quote, but I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's Star Wars. Like, yeah. Okay, I should probably watch the movie though. I'll add it to my list. Okay, so getting back to the book. Venture capital is, of course, a very useful fundraising tool, but it is best when used carefully at the right time. The longer you can bootstrap your company, the less equity you are giving away. You want to be at your strongest point where an injection of capital will do the most for your company before you approach investors. Interesting. Because I told y'all, like, I have things that I am working towards, like expanding my company from strictly e-commerce to having a physical studio and retail space where I can, like, curate shows and, share my fashion line, like have it be a gallery and a boutique in person, because I love, love, love doing art shows, but I cannot keep relying on like third party venues or like third party sponsors or galleries to be able to bring people together to enjoy my artwork. So even for me, like when I went to that class on business capital, and I think I talked about this probably a couple of weeks ago, when I went to that class, we did talk about venture capital, but we mostly talked about business loans. And yeah, like I think it is interesting navigating the different options, but I do like what she said about pitch competition. So, for my women entrepreneurs, I mean, it's pretty much sales. It's pretty much sales, and like public speaking is something I do like. I view it's all like a pageant, I used to do pageants. So it's like, yeah, maybe I think I'll look into that, because I have been hesitant to go the traditional venture capital trajectory myself, because I like to own my company. I'm not trying to, give away large chunks of a company that is still in the very early stages. And I'm glad that this book is kind of making me feel better about that decision. So just wanted to interject, share some of like what's going on behind the scenes with Alaere Lifestyle, because I mean, that's why we're here. Okay, so she says, if and when you do get to that point, you need to consider what you're gaining and what you're losing. It's really important to have a good idea of your own value so that you know when a deal is good for you. You will need to be aware of the value that you've created so far through validating your idea and the research you've done around it, as well as the level of product or team already built, and the market for deals in your space. As with every part of starting a company, research is key. So I'm telling y'all, that scientific method, like a SWOT analysis and the scientific method, put it together and everything, and I feel like you'll make better decisions. But like, she's speaking the truth. I feel like the more you can arm yourself with knowledge, especially as women, I just feel like the more lethal you become in life, and specifically in business. Like, a lot of stuff is just like, reading and listening to the interviews of people who have accomplished what you want to accomplish, and like being really picky about the sources that you take information from. And I think that's why I'm always so intentional about sharing like what my credentials are. Like, I'm like, hey, this is what I studied, this is where I went to school, this is where I worked in corporate, so you can know I'm not coming with any BS. Like, when I do share business advice, when I do share branding advice, it's from like almost 10 years of experience in corporate and then 2 Ivy League degrees. So it's like, I do think that, like, for me, I really do try to make sure that I can develop some type of expertise in the industries that I care about. And I think that, I've talked about this before, like beauty and brains is very essential. And I know it's not just women who watch me, And I know that men don't really go through the society that we live in with people telling them, you know, they're too pretty to do XYZ, or they should just like get a man or stay in the kitchen. Like, these are very real comments that people say. And I don't know, I feel like that's why this is a bit of a resistance, and that's why the Alaere Book Club even started. Like, why I decided, okay, like, let's read books, intentional books written by women, that can elevate our minds and elevate our ability to engage with the world in a way that is advantageous to us and our aspirations. So, yeah. But anyways, back to the book. Just had to share that. Okay. So another alternative to taking VC money is to apply for a spot in an accelerator, which is a structured program designed to help accelerate a startup early in its development, or an incubator, which is aimed at founders even earlier in the process to help them bring their ideas to life in a controlled environment. Companies accepted into accelerator programs are usually given a seed investment anywhere between $20,000 and $125,000 in exchange for a portion of their equity, ranging from 2% to 10%. Accelerators usually involve some aspect of mentorship from the organizers, which can be extremely helpful. It is also a good way to network with other founders and meet people in the ecosystem. If you're applying to accelerator programs, make sure that you have done your research first. Find out how much equity you will be giving up and what their terms and conditions are. Will you need to relocate? Are you required to go into fundraising rounds after the program, or can you opt to bootstrap your company? What perks do you receive? Who are the mentors? Find out how other founders who were accepted felt about the program. So I have heard of incubators. Like, I have some friends from college who like took that route. One friend in particular, his company is called Rhymes with Reason, and they use like like they work with schools and different sponsors and stuff like that, and they use basically like song and hip hop lyrics to teach SAT words and like help with literacy rates. Something like that. I'm sure he could like explain it better, but I remember he did I think it was called Y Combinator or something like that. So yeah, I think like that is also an option. But I will say, as someone who has like engaged with some of these spaces, they can be very male like dominated. So I mean, what's new? But like, just a heads up, it can be kind of male dominated, like a lot of like white guys. So I am curious if there are some like incubators that are more, how do I explain it, that like just have a deeper appreciation for development in Black communities, the global South, Africa, Latin America, because a lot of these institutions just, they don't get it. And it's like making me think about when I was at AfriCon a few weeks ago, or I guess like now a month ago. And one of the founders, I think she's a founder of Folklore, and she did do like multiple rounds of fundraising, raised millions of dollars for her company. She did talk about how like don't even bother pitching to people who don't, or she didn't even bother pitching to people who did not see the point of investing in supply chains in Africa. And like, I think for me, I'm just also at that place where I'm like, I know that it's not just African people that value my work and what I do. However, like, I'm African. Well, I mean, I'm also, American, but like, that's my heritage, and that's, a lot of the raw materials and things like that, the artisanship that I want to highlight through my company, I do want it to come from Africa. And I think a lot of times, like, it's just really important to be conscious about, especially if you care about the development and the expansion of Africa, like from a economic standpoint. I think if you care about that and you're also an entrepreneur, and even like let's take it further, a social entrepreneur, I feel like it's really important to make sure that your investors also value that. Like they also value that vision, or else they just are not gonna get it. Like that's just what I've noticed. But then also like going to talks and like panels and hearing investors who have been able to really just like take these really unique ideas and work on the ground with other founders in Africa and like just take advantage of this point of renaissance that we're seeing, you know, on the continent and across the diaspora. I just feel like something that they've really emphasized is work with people who see the vision, like not just have money to give you, but like they really understand, like, okay, yeah, it makes sense why I'm investing in these, you know, endeavors in this continent, in this part of the world right now, like why that matters. Because I remember the pitch competition I did, y'all, one of the judges said she didn't understand the type of words I was using. I was saying things like indigenous and decolonization. And she was like, yeah, I don't really understand. And I'm like, yeah, see, it's okay. Not everybody's gonna get it. But yeah, like I feel like make sure you go where you're understood, and it will make it easier to like get partnerships and, you know, people who want to help you move your business further. That is all I shall say on that. Okay. So she says another way to bootstrap your business is through debt, specifically through bank loans or SBA, Small Business Administration loans. You can also use debt as a way to protect your ownership stake in venture capital funding. This is when a venture capitalist gives you a loan and doesn't take equity in your business. Instead of expecting payment when the company eventually is sold or goes public, the lender issues a note with a date for repayment. They can also use a convertible note, which will state a date or milestone at which the debt will be exchanged for equity. It's important, it's important to remember that no money is free. So, no matter what, you'll always be incurring some kind of debt. I think if you are very serious about your company, you have a steady revenue stream, and you know you can, you know, pay the money back, and you have done your research and understand the ramifications of taking on debt, this can be a legitimate way to raise money for your company. However, most of the time you won't be able to take on enough debt to cover everything. So loans are usually used just to supplement another kind of funding. It is also worth mentioning grants at this point. Depending on the focus of your business, you may be eligible for research and philanthropic grants. Usually these would be given early on in the startup process. So again, do your research and see if you can benefit from any of these. A favorite way of mine to raise money is crowdfunding or equity crowdfunding. Crowdfunding involves your community, so customers, new fans, etc., giving small amounts of money to a project to ensure that the project can go ahead. Usually you will set a fundraising goal, and if you reach it, everyone who contributed gets something in return, such as a t-shirt, a public thank you, or early discounted access to the product or service. Some examples of crowdfunding sites are Indiegogo, Kickstarter, and Seed and Spark, which is a Backstage Capital portfolio company. You may well have contributed to a crowdfunding campaign yourself. So I actually did a crowdfunding campaign when I was publishing A Force of Nature. So I published, well, it was kind of like, it was a pre-sale campaign, but it was very similar to crowdfunding because like basically the pre-sales paid for a lot of the publishing costs. And so instead of the publisher I worked with like paying for all of that up front, and then I'd get an advance and then have to pay it back, you know, when I started getting royalties from the book. Basically I was able to start getting all of my revenue straight to me from my sales because like all of those publishing costs were covered by the crowdfunding campaign. I do, like, I've thought about crowdfunding. I think I've mentioned this in a past vlog, like a couple of months ago. But I've thought about crowdfunding for, the gallery boutique space, but I just look at like what's happening in the world and I'm like, is this a time to crowdfund? Like, is this, would that be tone deaf? I don't know. But I mean, it was people on here on live who were like, oh, you should, at least like have a cash app or something. And like, if people want to send money, they can. If not, it is what it is. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But okay, so she says with equity crowdfunding, instead of getting only a t-shirt or a thank you, those contributors get a tiny piece of the company. Prior to the jobs, Jumpstart Our Business Startups Act, which passed in 2012, only accredited investors could invest in startups. But now almost anyone can browse crowdfunding websites and invest in companies. This can be a great way to raise some capital for your company without giving away too much equity, and it is also an opportunity to test the market as you're more likely to be interacting with people who will be your customers. Some examples of equity crowdfunding sites include Republic, WeFunder, and Seed Invest. One advantage to equity crowdfunding is that it allows people who really care about the company to own a part of it, making them literally invested in its success. Gimlet Media, the company and podcast network that produced Startup, a podcast that featured me and Backstage Capital in a 6-part series in 2018, used equity crowdfunding as part of their capital raise. They crowd equity funded the last $250,000 to give their listeners a chance to be owners, meaning that when it was sold to Spotify in 2019, those crowd investors made upside. The downside to equity crowdfunding, like I was wondering, I was like, hold on, is it all, sparkly? Like what? They're like, what's the con? What's the catch? Okay, so she says the downside to equity crowdfunding is the amount of information you have to make public. Interesting. It requires a lot of paperwork, and you will need to show all of your financial information publicly. You'll need to make a really strong case for why people should invest in you so ensure that you put your best foot forward when you begin this process. Before applying to use a certain platform, get in touch with the fund organizers directly and ask what you'll need to disclose in order to use their site. Always know what you're getting into. In September of 2021, I launched my company Runner, which seamlessly matches fractional and temp to hire operations talent with inclusive startups that have 1 to 1,000 employees. I decided that I was going to bootstrap Runner as far as I could, and not only that, I was going to do it in public. I wanted complete transparency. If it failed, I wanted people to see why and to learn from it. And if it was successful, I wanted people to see that too and understand that they could do the same thing one day. So far, I have raised $3 million through angel investors and 1 seed round. After seeing the power of raising through crowdfunding and what that could mean for the future, aside from the positive effect I believe this will have on the generational wealth of underestimated groups, it has also given me a sense of mental freedom. Okay, so let me just check in. Okay, so hi, if you're new, we're reading from Your First Million by Arlan Hamilton. So I just wanted to take a break because, even though I'm in Professor Pessu mode, I feel like, we still need to make it interactive. But yeah, so today is Monday, which means we're doing Alaere Book Club. And I just started this. Like, I literally just started going live in October for the most part, y'all. And so the reason why I think it's important to have a book club component is because, well, one, I am an author and I value literacy so much. And I think that the books that we read can transform the thoughts that we have, which can transform the breadth of our imagination. And as adults, I think that, society, especially as adult women, because it is Alaere Lifestyle, Alaere means queen. So especially for, grown-up women, our priorities that we're conditioned to have as we get older, they shift further and further away from self-mastery and self-development. And I think that books have been a tremendous resource for me as I engage with a new chapter in my life, as I gain the knowledge to be a better founder, a better CEO, as I, just like work towards making sure I'm more emotionally intelligent. I'm more intelligent about, things that are happening in the world that I want to understand, and that also I still like maintain a sense of wonder and a sense of, imagination that I do need to be able to create, artwork and to create new designs. I feel like books play a huge part in making sure I maintain that. And so I felt like it was very important to have the book club be a part of Alaere Lifestyle TV. And so we do the Alaere Book Club every Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and then Tuesdays onwards. For the most part, lately, I've just been live painting some wearable art pieces, but I'll probably also, start incorporating live painting on canvas. And then once I have enough pieces painted, I will be bringing back the Alaere lookbook, which is when I style different pieces from my collection and, show them to you. And yeah, like what else? Oh yeah, and I haven't done a beauty look inspired by my artwork in some time, so I will get back to doing that. I just, one step at a time, one step at a time. So, I have just some things I want to finish, but yeah, like be sure to subscribe, share this channel with somebody who you think will be into it, who likes art and fashion and, intellectual and spiritually elevated conversations. Yeah. Okay, so back to the book. Also, I'm sure my tea is probably, I think it's cold. Let's see. It is, but it still tastes good. Also, I'm probably, I don't know if I'm going to stay on until 5 today. I don't know. Let's see. I might get off a little bit early today, or earlier than I have been lately, because I do have some things to do. So, I'm gonna see how much more. So we're gonna go all the way to, I guess like we can see how far we want to go. I say, oh, I don't know if I want to go until 5 now and then watch it be 5. But I really do want to still have time to share a selection from my book, and also to share a little bit about the book that we'll be reading for November. This is less business-y and more like self-concept, self-confidence. Like, it's definitely more traditional self-help, but it's not cheesy. You Are a Badass is actually a book that I read back in like 2019 when I first started my grad program at Brown. And I remember I really needed to read this book because I was going through it, y'all. I had just quit a corporate job because of sexual harassment, and like it was a whole thing. I was considering legal action. Like, it was really a lot. And then I had gotten out of a really toxic relationship at the time. And then I'm starting a graduate program. It was a lot. And so I think that reading this book, You Are a Badass, it just like, it really, I don't know, it just like transformed my whole conceptualization of myself. And like in tandem with reading this, I was also learning about my divine feminine archetypes through the work of the late Aisha Fames, who has a company called Women Love Power, which if you're interested in like anthropology and history and mythology and like how that pertains to divine feminine energy, like her work is really cool. And so I was learning about that, and I also read this book at the same time, and it's like it just opened up a new it just opened up a new world for me. Like I think I started seeing everything differently, and I just feel like for Scorpio season, intense, passionate, you know, transformation, change. I feel like this could be a good book. Okay. And then also, like, I do want to take a moment to, you know, read a selection from my book. So, yeah, like, today is the last day we are reading from Your First Million, but I feel like we've read a good bit from this book. I mean, this book has, like, around 200 pages, so I don't know if I really expected us to finish it all the way. But this music is loud, but let's see. I think this book also has over 200 as well. So like we're probably just going to keep doing like what we did with this, like read as much as we can, have some conversations, and then if you feel so inclined, continue reading the book. If not, you know, at least you gain some knowledge from what I did share on here. But I guess like what I could do is I could put a blog like of, you know, the book, and then just like make sure y'all have an idea of like what are the main points in the book, why we chose it, and stuff like that. So I'll find a way to like make some type of resource for those of y'all who really do want to keep up with the books that we're reading in the book club. So let me know in the chat if that's something that you like really intensely care about, and I'll make sure I do something like that. Let's see. Okay, so after seeing the power of raising through crowdfunding and what that can mean for the future, aside from the positive effect I believe this will have on the generational wealth of underestimated groups, it has also given me a sense of mental freedom. Taking all of this, not the music is trying to compete with me. Taking all of this into account, you may wonder why I'm a venture capitalist. The answer is simple. Because venture capital is powerful and we deserve to see ourselves represented there. As Arlan Douglas of Motley Fool Ventures pointed out on my podcast, episode 48, out of the 10 most valuable companies in the world, 7 of them are venture-backed. The 3 that aren't were created prior to venture capital existing. These companies are driving industries, and it's important that underestimated people are a part of that. Venture capital can help people create generational wealth and can help create economic equality. If we cannot play a part in controlling economic resources, we're going to continue to live in a racist world where we routinely see the public execution of people of color on television. There is not one right answer to the question, how should I fund my business? The right funding route for you will depend on a lot of factors, including expenses, how big a team you need, your price point, etc. These should all be considered when deciding which type of funding is right for you. Your company may have high overhead costs that require a large investment up front, or you may have something you can bootstrap to $1 million valuation. As always, the most important thing is to do as much research as possible. Find out who the players are, what they're offering, what you're giving up, and what it means for the future of your company. Okay, Eric says hi. Hi, Eric. Welcome back. So today we're reading from Your First Million by Arlan Hamilton. And yeah, we're finishing up the chapter on owning your company. And I'm trying to decide, like, should we read this next chapter? Okay, so now we're going to read Owning Your Profits, and then I think we're going to segue into a little bit more about the book choice for November. And I'm going to read a poem from my book, and then we're going to end it off there. I mean, I guess I could also talk about, like, my art just a little bit. Your intellect reading is attractive. I appreciate your time and your intelligence. Thank you, Eric, for those kind words. Yeah, I appreciate you being here. Make sure you like the video, and I think you're already subscribed, but tell your friends, tell people to subscribe. Okay, so now we're on chapter 10. And like I said, y'all, like, even though we're not gonna finish the entire book together here, me reading to you, because I feel like that would be a little bit boring if I just sat and like read to y'all, and it would probably make me fall asleep. But I feel like this is just still like a cool way for us to engage with the book. I'm going to keep reading the book on my own, and I highly encourage that y'all do too. And I have been meaning to create the Alaere Lifestyle Tumblr just so I can talk more about the book, like long form, but maybe I should just like leave the blog on my website, because I don't know. I mean, this is such an aside. Like, I'm like, do I still want to like make a Tumblr for like having like a mood board ish type of thing? But then I'm like, we already have a Pinterest for the company. I don't know. See, literally, this is what goes on in my head. I'm like, every additional social media is a funnel at the end of the day. So I'm like, is that one more place that I feel like I need to be posting? Or like, because I'm just trying to think of like where I can write my reflections about what I'm reading. But I guess like we could do the community tab on this channel. Yeah, because I do still want to like come back and share with y'all like what I'm reading from it as I finish the book. And even though I know we'll be reading this in November, I don't know, I don't want to leave y'all hanging just in case. But I do still think that y'all should go and buy the book. Okay, so owning your profits. When you run a venture fund, you usually receive a management fee. This fee comes from the assets under management, your AUM, and it's usually around 2% of the total amount invested in the fund. Excuse me. If you have a $20 million fund with $20 million committed every year, the management fee would be around $400,000. That's enough to employ maybe 1 or 2 people, and they pay the third-party vendors who are helping with legal, accounting, etc. Sometimes those legal and accounting costs, as well as the fund formation expenses, are covered by the fund outside of your management fee. But in general, it will all come from that 2%. So $400,000 is a good amount of money to run a solo fund or run a fund with a friend. You both got a good salary that can pay the bills. Maybe you lease a co-working space and you're off to the races. Backstage Capital has never had that type of money. The capital raised for Backstage was raised in small increments, usually $25,000 at a time, and we never had a committed investment that we could count on year after year. Because our fund was small, the usual 2% given for the management fee did not cover the cost of running the fund. In some of our earlier funds, when we raised $1 million, I got a small fee, but I took it up front, a few $1,000s at most. So it really didn't do the job that a management fee is supposed to do. Okay. In larger funds, especially hedge funds or private equity funds, the managers will sometimes sell percentage points of their profit share to cover their operating expenses. In these cases, they tend to have a lot of money under management and they know where things are going money-wise, but they're looking to liquidate a little bit earlier. Okay, so I know it's getting like really businessy. So I think that's actually like a good sign. Like, I'm not saying that y'all don't want to like hear all this business talk, but I feel like it's getting very like, the book is, I'm seeing a lot of numbers. I'm like, ooh, this is exciting to me, but I'm like, okay, I feel like for the rest of the book, it will be good for me to just read, summarize the main points, and just like put them on a community post. And I think that would be good because y'all don't want to hear all this, I'm sure. And that's why like I picked You Are a Badass for November. And like I feel like we've gotten a lot of like the good ideological juice from the book. And now she's getting more into like the nitty gritty. So like talking about liquidating and percentages and fees. I know that can sometimes like make people fall asleep. To me, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I think that this is very useful information. So, but it might not always be like the best to read out loud. So I'm just saying, I empathize with you guys. Like, we're gonna finish this chapter and then we're gonna like read something a little bit more lyrical. But I do hope that this information, you're like soaking it in, taking some notes if you need to, because this is very much so Professor Pesu coded. Okay. So she says, yeah, in these cases, they tend to have a lot of money under management and they know where things are going money wise, but they're looking to liquidate a little bit earlier. One example of this is Robert Smith, who has sold hundreds of millions of dollars worth of his own upside to a firm called Dial Capital Partners. So it happens every once in a while, but it's not the norm. Usually that management fee would cover the expenses. It's there to prop up your company. Because the management fee for Backstage Capital couldn't cover our expenses, I had to be creative, flexible, and forward thinking to keep the company running. So as soon as I started raising capital, I started selling off parts of my own profit share, my carried interest, aka carry. Even back in 2015, I knew that Backstage was going to become something big. I knew it was worth something. I knew this because I wouldn't have it any other way. See, that's what I was talking about earlier about not having a plan B when it comes to your goals and aspirations. It's like you go big or you go home. Like it's a winner's mindset. Yeah, I think that's what I'll call it. It's like a winner's mindset. Like if you're competitive in anything, you go in like I'm about to win this. I'm about to annihilate. Like I'm going in Spartan energy, okay, Huntress energy, and I'm going to win. And I just feel like you have to be that way with your goals. Like, and I don't think it means being horrible to people or anything, but I think it's more of like an internal, intrinsic type of motivation. Okay, so moving on. I also knew I had expenses to pay. So I decided to sell a sliver of my future upside. Each $25,000 or $100,000 infusion helped me keep the lights on at Backstage. By the time I looked up in 2018, I realized I had sold too much of my carry. I don't regret it because it kept me in business, but as Backstage started hitting major milestones, such as growing our portfolio to 100 companies and hiring more amazing staff, I began to feel disheartened by the fact that I had to give up so much of my future profit to get us to this point. Things were really starting to move forward. We were growing. We had brand recognition, and I knew some of the companies we had invested in were going to do big things. I hated the fact that I had to give up so much so early, but I also knew that the next few years were going to be tough if I was already at such a loss. I started thinking about going back to some of those investors, especially the ones who had the larger amounts of capital. There were one or two who had an outsized portion. And I was thinking about asking to buy back some of that carried interest. The problem with that was that I still didn't have the money to buy it back yet. Hi, Demet. Okay, Demet says, what are you reading? So I'm reading Your First Million by Arlan Hamilton, who is a multi-million-dollar venture capitalist. She owns a venture capital firm called Backstage Capital. And so this was our book choice for October. And right now we're in the chapter Owning Your Profits. And we're literally reading the last page. And then we're going to talk about the book that we're reading for November, which is like more... Well, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. And then I'm gonna end off with like a book reading from my book, Course in Nature. Okay, so fast forward to 2020, the pandemic has hit, and like many companies, we had to lay off some staff. We were running on fumes, not for the first time, and we had to decide what was next for us as a company. Did we want to keep our amazing portfolio but work other jobs day to day? Or was there another way to keep things going? I thought back to Robert Smith and those other hedge fund managers who had sold a portion of their carry to a large institution in exchange for a minority stake in their company. I had done the same thing on a smaller scale and regretted it, and now here I was having to do it again. So I decided to do it differently this time. I wanted to do it in a way that felt like a win for more people, in a way that would deliver those early investors even more value, at least on paper, than they had received before, while also getting new investors into Backstage. I started thinking about crowdfunding, not for the fund itself, but simply to finance the management of the fund. In March of 2021, our crowdfund launched and we restructured. When the dust settled, our early investors had more value than they previously had had. I was still the majority stakeholder in my company, and we now had nearly 7,000 new investors who would also benefit. I finally felt like things were balanced and fair again. This is why I am such a big believer in second chances. I'd given myself a chance to correct my earlier mistake, and it paid off. Sure, I could have just settled for being a minority stakeholder in the company I built. Instead, I found a way to keep the company afloat without shortchanging anyone, including myself. Whew, I think that's a good place for us to leave this book off. Let's see. This is how far we got. We read a good chunk. It's about to get a little bit more, I don't know, businessy, school academic. So I do think that overall this was a really great book for us to engage with. I mean, let's run it back. Let's see. We had a chance to talk about starting a business, ownership, the history of entrepreneurship in Black communities. I mean, what else? This was a really good book. I think that, as a woman founder myself, I mean, I'm even, right now, even the lip gloss I'm using was founded by a woman, Summer Fridays. It makes a difference. It really does make a difference when I'm able to support other businesses created by women, other businesses created by Black women, by African women. We need more of that. And I think that, a patriarchal economy or a patriarchal world system in tandem with an economy that doesn't always really allow women to be fair competitors, I just think it's lacking, and it's not really, it's not giving what capitalism could be, which I think is a whole nother conversation about are we doing capitalism right? Are we really, existing in a free market society if prejudice and sexism and racism all have a chance to, exist and thrive? Or are we doing it how it was designed? If, imperialism is said to be the highest form or the highest stage or late stage capitalism. So anyway, I feel there's so many bigger questions, but I think at a micro level, being able to create generational wealth for yourself and being able to be a pillar in your community, whether that's just the smaller spheres of influence that you navigate within your immediate family and maybe your extended family, or even, if you want to make a difference in a world as big as your county, your state, your country even. I feel being intentional about the businesses that you start and the partnerships that you strategically engage in, I think that can make a huge difference. And I really hope that y'all enjoyed your first million. I really hope that I can connect with Arlan Hamilton one day. For real, I met her briefly once at a conference that Black Enterprise did, and I just had to stop her. I was like, oh my gosh, I love your work. And that was before I even heard of this book. I don't know when she published this book. I don't know if she had published it by then, but this is a really good book. Okay, so now this is the book that we're going to be reading. You Are a Badass. This is what we're going to be reading for November for Scorpio season. So let me just read you the back. It's by Jen Sincero. This is a New York Times, a #1 New York Times bestselling author. She's a speaker and a success coach who has helped countless people transform their personal and professional lives. Okay, so the back says, You Are a Badass is the self-help book for people who desperately want to improve their lives but don't want to get busted doing it. In this refreshingly entertaining how-to guide, best-selling author and world-traveling success coach Jen Sincero serves up 27 bite-sized chapters full of hilariously inspiring stories, sage advice, easy exercises, and the occasional swear word, helping you to 1. Identify and change the self-sabotaging beliefs and behaviors that stop you from getting what you want. 2. Create a life you totally love and create it now. And 3. Make some damn money already, the kind you've never made before. By the end of You Are a Badass, you'll understand why you are, how to love what you can't change, how to change what you don't love, and how to use the force to kick some serious ass. Okay, so yeah, this is a bit more punchy. And why I decided that we should read this book is because, one, I was gonna reread it anyways, and like between product development, painting, sourcing, all that stuff, I just have not had time to like read as much as I used to. And then, I'm also launching the Alaere Manifesto magazine, so it's like there's been a lot going on. But I was like, I really do want to read this book because I remember the last time I read it, like I saw a lot of positive change in my life, and it just put me in such a great mindset. And it was kind of around this time of the year, I want to say, like the last time I read this in 2019, yeah, I think was around like October, November. And so I feel like this is a perfect time in the year to just kind of like, rededicate ourselves to our goals and how passionate we want to be about where we're going and where we're headed. And so I do think that reading this book, combined with Scorpio season and just like kind of that last push of Q4 before the holidays for real, I think this can just like reignite that dedication to our goals and to not be, too discouraged. Like I feel like it's good to have a balance, and I'm excited. I'm going to tell you guys the book that we're going to read for December, but not yet. But yeah, I feel like we need to have a balance. Like you want to arm yourself with the practical, logical knowledge, but if you don't have the confidence to go forth and like actually implement what you're learning, and you don't have the confidence to actually, go out there into the world, what good does it do? You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, I think that this is going to be, I think this is going to be good. I mean, like literally, I just opened to, wow, the text is really small in this book. Woo, wow. Okay, but anyways, I just opened to a random page and she says, love yourself and life becomes a party. And yeah, I think, it's gonna be like more spiritual, more energetic, a little bit more woo 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 woo. And I think I'm excited for that. I think that this was definitely sage advice. Now this is on that lover girl frequency advice while still reminding you that like you are awesome and you are a force of nature, which is a perfect segue into my book, which let me actually put a link to where y'all can purchase my book, Force of Nature. So I'm going to put that in the chat right now. So that way, if you want to order a copy from Amazon, you can do so. Okay, so let me put it in there right now. Link to order my book. Okay. So I think it is pinned. Okay, yeah, it's pinned now. Okay, so yeah. We are going to read from Force of Nature. And I think the poem I will read is I actually didn't really like pick one, but I just knew I wanted to read from I wanted to read from this today. Okay, so I think the poem I'm going to read is called My Time Is Mine from the Soil chapter. And in this chapter, I talk about like what we grow from. And I really do feel like this harvest energy, oh my gosh, 444 as I say this, yeah, it's definitely feeling very aligned. I just feel like cultivating inner harmony within and just like cultivating an environment within yourself where there is harmony between your masculine and your divine feminine, and there's harmony, you know, between your light and your shadow side. Like just having that sweet duality within and honoring that harmony can now emanate outwards. And I think that one of the best ways to cultivate harmony is to reclaim your time. Like, we give so much time to things that don't matter. And I think a lot of times, you know, when we are spending time doing things that don't really matter in the grand scheme of things, or we're thinking about things that don't really matter, it separates us from the harmony that is our, like, resting place. Like, that peace that surpasses understanding, like, we were born with that because we were created in the image of God. So, like, that is who we are at our core. But I think that, you know, sometimes we allow ourselves to just like give time and energy to things that don't matter. So this poem is kind of about reclaiming and like that reclamation of time and just energy. Okay, so this is called My Time Is Mine. I wrote this in my book, Force of Nature. I hope you enjoy. Okay, so I sing. I remember that scary plunge. I ran from what I could not yet know. Spiraling, floating, suffocating, pleading, wishing, waiting. Then leaving to seek more, only to find myself repeating the same cycle of sensations over and over. Feeling pain I cannot disclose, not for fear of judgment, but because I fear no one will care. I drink until nighttime feels warm, and then I awake the next morning and I try again and again, over and over again and again. Until I stop to stare over the ledge and ask myself what I am forgetting, mistaking, hiding, suppressing, holding, ignoring, mourning. And as I began to unpack my heart and heal my mind, I grew some wings and I found a new sky. Now I was flying, soaring, levitating, exploring, rising, ascending, resurrecting, freeing, being, and becoming someone who could hug the sun and kiss the stars and shake the hand of the moon. Because I had taken and owned and protected and finally reclaimed my time. Okay, so that was My Time Is Mine from my book, Force of Nature by Odemi Pesu. So be sure to check it out. But yeah, I think today was a really cool, chill day. Like, it's like rainy and gloomy outside. I was a little cold. I had to get comfy in my sweater. But yeah, like, I'm just really happy to have y'all here. Be sure to tune in every weekday at 3 p.m. I go live from my art studio. So I'd say this is my new reading corner. I love this art. Like, let me actually push the tripod back just a little so you guys can see. So this is the artwork behind me. She's cute. Like, I was looking at her like, do I really feel like she's done? I don't know yet. I don't know if I would say that she's done. She's definitely unlike anything I have ever created. It started out very different, and then I decided to add a bit more abstraction to the composition. And I was also looking at work by, what is her name? I saw her in the Guggenheim years ago. Hilma af Klint. Yeah, I was looking at some of the symbols and geometry that she puts into her work. And even though for the most part there's like much more negative space than what I included in this painting, I still felt like, I don't know, I really vibed with how I was able to kind of still maintain some like shape or form, but like still have it be really abstract. But like just like sitting in front of it, I'm like, wait, I really like this artwork. So I'll see, you know, if I want to add stuff to it. It's just there, it's hanging. So I'm like, okay, if I feel like doodling or adding something, I'll see what it's looking like by the end of this year and go from there. But I think like, I don't know, maybe it can be somewhat of a portal to like help me kind of like close out this chapter of, I don't know, what I really feel like was my Saturn return. Like I honestly feel like I had to go through a lot of different lessons. 28 and now I'm in a new year of life and Libra season is over. So I know it's like, wow, tear. But you know, I feel like Scorpio season, I do have some Scorpio on my chart. And I feel like this is a season of intensity, of passion, of like just full throttle, like at that end of the year push. And you know, all of these books that we have engaged with today are all created to elevate you, you know, mentally. I think once you master up there, once you master your mind, you can really engage with life from a place of imaginative force. Like you can really go for what you want. It was Reading Dreams from My Father by Barack Obama that changed my life when I was like 11. And it was writing this book that changed my life and like even gave me the confidence to start my own company. So, you know, I mean, like, life, man, life does not have to be hard. It really doesn't have to be. But I do think that we can make life more imaginative and we can imagine new paradigms and new ecosystems of creativity, of joy, of love, of light. And I think optimism is really tied to what we put into our minds, and like our thoughts can also trickle down into the energy that we hold spiritually and in our souls. Like those limiting beliefs, like we're gonna get to them, and you are a badass, like, because it's gonna be very hard to implement anything if you don't believe that you are that girl, that guy. Like if you don't believe that you are the best you that there is, like what can we really do? What can we really do with that, you know? So we have to start at the core. Like we have the knowledge, now we're gonna build that sense of just like supreme confidence, not narcissism, not looking down on others, but really just honoring that that's something that is intense and unique and special that is embedded deep within you as a child of God. Period. Okay, so yeah, that's that for today. I'm so happy to have had you guys here. Also, if you want to like buy any of my artwork, you can do so at www.AlaereLifestyle.com, and be sure to subscribe to the channel Alaere Lifestyle TV. I go live every weekday from my studio at 3 p.m. All right, I will see y'all soon. Well, yeah, I'll see y'all tomorrow. Bye.